Dear Mayor, I'm writing this open letter to you and all the other mayors around the world who one day have dreams of bringing the Olympic Games to your town. It's a lot of fun. The pomp, the circumstance, the luxury box tickets you're treated to, but boy, are the Olympics expensive. Tokyo's budget grew from $7 billion to $25 billion, and that was before the pandemic increased costs even more, all for just 16 days of events. Remember those billions of dollars that companies like NBC pay to broadcast the games? They don't go to you. So you've got to figure out how to fund all those facilities and services and first responders yourself. Well, here's some free advice on how not to blow your budget hosting an Olympic Games. First, don't even think about chasing the games unless you're a unicorn of a city. You need to be big enough not to just have world-class venues, but also 40,000 hotel rooms and universities with dorms you can use to house athletes and mass transit. But the very biggest cities may not get return on that Olympic investment either.
And you can't argue that, wow, this Olympics really put London on the map, because if London's not already on your map, you really need to get yourself a new map.
That's Holy Cross economist Victor Matheson, co-author of Going for the Gold, a research paper that details how badly most host cities fare financially. He says a lot of the value depends on what you're marketing.
If you think you're a hidden gem, so you have a lot to offer the world that the world doesn't know about, that's what's going to maximize your ability to really capitalize on the branding and advertising the Olympics brings you.
Matheson says Salt Lake City did it successfully, boosting long-term tourism by marketing itself as a winter alternative to neighboring Colorado, where cities like Atlanta didn't seem to do much to convince the world there was much to see beyond their fancy new facilities. Which brings me to my second piece of advice on how not to blow your budget hosting an Olympics. Do not get into a bidding war over the games. It's not worth it.
If we actually look at Olympics between 1960 and 2016, so a pretty broad time frame there, the average Olympic Games went 156% over budget.
Sochi was more than 300% over budget according to AP estimates. Rio, 50%. Pyeongchang, 100%. And Tokyo, nearly 200% over budget before the pandemic shot the cost of these games even higher.
Cities would overpromise or promise whatever they could because they had to if they wanted to win the bid, and often the pressure was on them to win.
Rob Livingstone, journalist at GamesBids.com, says so many cities have finally come around on this, most have stopped bidding. And it's prompted the International Olympic Committee to move more toward an invitation process. It's reminiscent of how Los Angeles got the 1984 games on the cheap. No one else wanted them. They had a bad reputation. Newsweek even wondered, are the games dead?
We had no money for anything. I mean, it went down to the office supplies that we bought.
Deborah K. Duncan, former member of the LA Olympic Organizing Committee. By most accounts, 1984 was the last games to actually turn a surplus.
When you think you don't have money and you spend like you don't have money, I think that's part of the reason we ended up with a lot of money, because we did not spend money on anything.
They spent zero tax dollars and rolled their surplus into a nonprofit that still dishes out grants to youth programs all around Southern California today. LA 2028 pledges to do the same. How? Mayors of the world, here's your third secret to not blowing your budget: using existing venues, even if they're a century old. I know there's temptation to build world-class Olympic stadiums and aquatic centers and velodromes, but they're not a good use of tax dollars. Just ask Athens how much use it's getting out of its 2004 softball or beach volleyball stadiums these days. LA 84, however, relied on the Coliseum, built in 1923, and UCLA's Pauley Pavilion, built in 1965. And they're going to do it again for the 2028 Summer Games, when those venues are 105 and 73 years old, respectively. In a time where most US cities no longer have stadiums wide enough to accommodate an Olympic track, don't promise one, or else you may be $1 billion in the hole straight out of the gate. Tip number 4 on how not to bust your budget: if you're going to spend on better roads and transit, not on facilities.
The more money you can spend on general infrastructure rather than specific infrastructure is probably a good bet.
Matheson says investing in facilities may impress the world for weeks, but as Barcelona found, investing in your city's basic needs at the time of the Olympics can leave a much longer lasting legacy.
But it's pretty unlikely that a velodrome or a stadium or an arena or a world-class whitewater rafting run, none of those things are likely to turn into long-run economic generators.
Finally, mayors, I shouldn't need to tell you this, but be transparent with your constituents. If they're paying for it, either with their tax dollars or their time and patience, they shouldn't be misled on the costs. And don't price them out of the events either.
My advice to an organizing committee is to not forget about the people in your community and have them experience it. You know, it's the best thing in the world to all feel together, to come together at that one time. And that's, you know, that's a moment you can share with your community, and it shouldn't be lost.
Remember, any city can create great Olympic memories, but it takes a unicorn to avoid creating great Olympic debt. Sincerely, Noah Pransky, NBCLX.